Hey everyone, and welcome to Satisfactory News, or welcome back to Satisfactory News. Today we're looking at some basics for a newer player who maybe feels a little overwhelmed or like they're not being efficient. And I'm happy to say that this video was made possible by another game that I love, War Thunder. More on that later in the video. This video will teach you 3 basic setups that you will be using throughout the game, which each come with their own lessons that you can apply to other aspects of the game. These are foundational setups. We'll start with a basic ingot setup that you'll use every time you set up a new factory. Then we'll cover the most efficient coal power setup to get you powered up in the early game. And then finally, I'll show you a few key alternate recipes you can get in Tier 2 that could completely transform how you set up your early game production lines in that tier. Spoiler alert, it eliminates screws. So stick around to hear that one. The basic ingot manifold. It won't take too long to get to the very powerful splitters and mergers. These let you use one of the most powerful and common tools in the whole game, which is manifold systems. A manifold system is simple. It takes in one belt and splits the contents between a number of machines using the least amount of infrastructure possible. Usually that means placing a splitter on the main belt in front of each machine. Because of how splitters work, every other item that goes through the splitter will go in a particular direction. So in this basic manifold that's on screen now, one iron ore will go straight, and the next will go right, and the next will go straight again. Those iron ores that hit the next splitter will do the same. But because each splitter is only getting half as much material as the one before it, the last machine will fill up that much slower than the first one. But as long as you let the system fill up before you turn it on, or you've balanced your inputs and outputs properly, this won't be a downside. After just a few minutes, it will usually even out and the machines will start functioning normally. This is a lot more space efficient than what's called a load balancer, which uses splitters to evenly split a single input belt across all the machines. Anyways, this manifold setup is the most basic in all of Satisfactory, and you can start using it right away for maximum efficiency. And you will never stop using this method even hundreds of hours in. Because the best part about it is how expandable it is. If you're starting out and you only have Mark 1 belts, which move 60 items per minute, you only need 2 smelters for a line of iron ore because that's all you can handle. So you can arrange 1 smelter on each side of a splitter. Easy. Then when you upgrade them to Mark 2 belts and can move 120 items per minute, you can add another splitter and 2 more smelters behind that and connect the main belt. And so on as you progress through the game and get bigger belts. Simply give yourself enough space to expand, and you'll be able to scale these setups up pretty easily. Here is how I like to set up the manifold. I place down 2 rows of machines with at least 1 platform between the rows. Place the inputs toward the center. Then place a belt down the center. This will be your main input belt. Now place a splitter in front of each pair of smelters on that belt and connect those splitters to the machines. Alternatively, if you're having trouble getting this to work, I generally just build all the splitters first and then make a bunch of little belts in between them, so do whichever one is easiest or most natural for you. Now for the outputs, choose which direction you want that to go. Usually I send it in the same direction the materials flowed in. Then, starting with the first machine in the line, build a belt in straight belt build mode and create the output belt. Be sure to make it far enough away that you can fit a merger and a connection belt in between. Then add mergers and connection belts just like you did in the center. Then mirror this process for the other row of outputs. As you get more comfortable with building in Satisfactory, you might find new ways to do this that are more interesting. For example, some people like to use lifts to bring all of the outputs up and then merge them in the center. That way you can just continue to use a center belt that goes right over the input belt. Now you have 2 output belts, and you can decide how you want to move them. This will depend on your factory, but usually I just put a merger down at the end of the center input line and merge both output belts together. Then I have a new input belt for the next stage in the production line. Now if that felt tedious at all, don't worry too much, because as soon as you unlock blueprints in Tier 4, you're going to want to blueprint setups like this. And yes, they're standard enough that you can blueprint them quite easily, as long as you keep 8 machines in mind as a good number. Or really any multiple of 4, but 8 tends to work out pretty well. For example, smelters can each process 30 iron and copper ore per minute, so they work perfectly with all of the numbers that a miner naturally outputs. Even with a fully overclocked miner Mark 3 and Mark 6 belts moving 1200 resources per minute, the math still works out great. It's a multiple of 8. In the case of 1200 resources, that's 40 smelters, or 5 groups of 8. I highly recommend creating a blueprint of 8 smelters that's easy to link together and repeat using Blueprint Auto-Connect mode, because you'll be using this blueprint a lot during your entire playthrough. Every time you want to harvest a new node, you will be using this blueprint. Other machines, even constructors, may be a little more specific depending on what you're making, so multiples of 4 may or may not always work, but at least for the basic iron and copper items, it should usually work out. And I recommend having a basic blueprint for ingots, for plates, for wire, just all the basics, because you're going to be using that a lot, and they're often going to be in these standardized numbers. So, in summary of this section, using the basic manifold system is simple and space efficient, which also makes it easy to blueprint. It's super expandable and is a great starting point for almost every factory you're ever going to build. It works in the early game, and you should master it early because it's going to stay relevant as you progress. This setup is basic, and I think you're ready for something a little more complex, like War Thunder's damage system. That's right, this video is sponsored by War Thunder, and if you watch my channel, you know I rarely have sponsors, because I only want to tell you guys about things I've used and that I believe in. So, let me talk to you about War Thunder for a minute. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made for PC, consoles, and mobile devices, with over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships spanning 10 major nations and over 100 years of military technology, from biplanes to fighter jets. I was actually there back when tanks were new, and let me tell you, the X-ray damage view was mind-blowing, allowing me to learn exactly where to strike in the future. With realistic graphics, detailed vehicles, and authentic sound effects, War Thunder is super immersive. I know everyone watching this video is a passionate nerd about something, and if that something happens to be military history, there is no better game for you than this. Also, it's 100% free and runs buttery smooth. I first started playing 12 years ago when I was in college, and having a free game that could actually run on my old laptop made War Thunder my favorite game. Choose between fast-paced arcade matches or the ultimate challenge, simulator mode, or find that comfortable middle ground with realistic mode. No matter your preference, there is a game mode for you and a vehicle type for you. As much as I love the fast-paced plane battles, I am definitely partial to the tactics required to win a tank battle in tight city streets. So join me and 95 million other players worldwide on PC, console, or the new mobile version for free, and make history in War Thunder. Sign up using my links in the pinned comment or video description and get a massive bonus pack available for new players, or returning players that haven't played for at least 6 months, on PC and consoles. This pack includes the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 silver lions, and 7 days of premium for your account. It's only available for a limited time, so check the links now. The ideal coal setup. Coal power is the first fully automated power source that you'll have in the game, and it presents new challenges to players that they'll have to deal with for the rest of the game. Mostly that being fluids. At this stage of the game, power is likely one of your main concerns. You want to expand your factories and you have a lot of the resources to do so, but you just can't get enough power to keep them going. So it's critical that you run your coal plants as effectively as possible, and here's how. A coal generator consumes 15 coal per minute, which means you just need to divide the coal mining rate you have by 15 to get the number of generators that you can supply. Regardless of how many you end up with, it's most efficient to group them in pods of 8. That's because this uses 120 coal per minute, meaning you only have to use Mark II belts, which is what you'll have access to when you're first setting these up. So line up your coal generators and hook up the coal with splitters in a manifold. That's right, the manifold that I just told you about a second ago. While it's not necessary, you can instead build a very basic balancer for this and split the coal into 2 groups of 4 machines that each have their own smaller manifold. This will result in a slightly more even distribution, but if you let the coal back up first, it won't matter. This is just up to personal preference. Next, you're going to build an elevated pipe that goes over the splitters and build a pipeline junction on each, leaving enough room to connect the fluid input on the generators. Now you'll find that there's debate around whether the pipe should be on the top or the bottom, and there's arguments for both, so if you do have troubles with your liquids, definitely try both and see what works in your situation. Having them on the top means that you can use gravity to help the water just fall into the coal generators, but having them on the bottom means that you don't have to lift them up as physically high and have the water push up there. I personally prefer to have the water fall in from above with gravity, But that's just me. Now we need to get that water, which means we need to build the water extractors. Each section of 8 coal generators needs 360 water per minute, which works out great because water extractors harvest 120 per minute, so we need just 3 per set of 8 coal generators. But you may notice that a Mark I pipe can only move 300 per minute. That means we will have to inject the water at multiple points rather than just sending it all down the pipe at once. And this works because some portions of the pipe will be emptier than others because the water is being used, and there's enough space in the pipes for additional water. Let me paint a picture real quick. Once a 300 pipe flows past a coal generator, it has 45 less water per minute, meaning you could then inject 45 more water per minute right after that, and it would be able to handle it because the first machine takes that much water away. Anyways, on to the actual setups. There are a few options here. The first is to evenly distribute the water extractors. Put one on each end of your pipe, and then one that attaches to the center. To save space in the center, you can put 2 extractors on one end and one on the other. If you decide to split the coal generators into 2 groups of 4, you can have one extractor going to each subgroup, with the third splitting evenly between the 2. As you can see, there is a whole bunch of ways to set up a coal power plant, but these are going to be some of the most space efficient, resource efficient, and power efficient for the early game, which is where those factors will matter the most. For a slightly less efficient but easier setup, you can attach a single water extractor underclocked to 75% to a pair of coal generators. This will provide the 90 water per minute that the 2 generators together need, while removing as many other factors as possible. This will add one more water extractor to the mix per group of 8 generators, but it's undeniably a more straightforward solution. If you're building on an ocean or a really large body of water, you might want to go this route, but if you're stuck in the middle of the map with a bunch of lakes and ponds, you probably want to be as space efficient as possible with your water extractors so that you can get the most water. What you choose here is really going to depend on where you are on the map. Going screwless in Tier 2. As you set up your early factories, you will come to hate screws. Many recipes require them, they are a multi-step process, and they can very quickly overwhelm your low-capacity belts in the early game. Thankfully, the game has a way to effectively remove these struggles, and I recommend pursuing them early. The solution is hard drives. In case you don't know, those crash sites you see around the map can be opened up to reveal a hard drive, which can then be scanned in the MAM to present you with alternate recipes. If you're not doing this, I highly recommend taking a couple hours to just explore around your base and see how many you can find, especially with the help of the object scanner. Now, not every alternate recipe seems amazing at first, and some of them are actually bad, but all of them offer you an alternate solution, which can help you solve specific problems that are unique to your setup or where you are on the map. However, there are a few standout recipes that are almost always good, and I'll probably make another video talking about these in more detail, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see me break down the top 5 alternate recipes. Anyways, for now, our goal is to optimize screws out of the equation. So the first recipe we're looking for is cast screws. Normally you have to turn iron ore into iron ingots, those ingots into rods, and then finally turn the rods into screws. With cast screws, you skip the rods entirely and make screws directly out of ingots. The nice thing about this alternate recipe is that the ratio is the same. In the default recipe, 1 iron ingot makes 4 screws. In the alternate recipe, 5 iron ingots makes 20 screws, both being a 1:4 ratio. You just completely eliminate a step, which means lower power usage and less materials spent on constructing buildings. So that's step 1, but ideally we want to completely eliminate screws. So let's keep looking for crash sites. The first item you'll be spending screws on is reinforced iron plates, and since those are used for Mark II belts, you're going to use a lot of them. This is the recipe that will make you hate screws. So the recipe we're looking for here is stitched iron plate. Now stay with me now. This uses wire instead of screws, and wire is made from copper. So while it's screwless, this alternate recipe does add copper into the mix where it was only iron before. But it doesn't have to, because we can also add another alternate recipe into the mix, and that is iron wire. The downsides are also minimal, but they are there. The default recipe for wire is a 1:2 ratio, and the iron wire alternate is only a slight downgrade using 5 ingots to make 9 wire. So it's almost a 1:2 ratio, but just a little bit worse. However, if you want to use only iron, which is very plentiful, and preserve your copper for other things, and then also get rid of screws, This pair of recipes allows for that, and is a great example of using early game alternate recipes together in a way that feels like solving a puzzle. This is a completely different production line now. However, I would say the one downside to this is that the numbers are pretty weird. But that's not too difficult to get around. The stitched iron plate recipe produces 5.625 reinforced iron plates per minute, which is just a gross number. Ideally, you'll want to have these in groups of 8, because that makes the lowest possible whole number from that number, which is 45. To do this, you need 18.75 iron plates per minute per machine, which times 8 is 150, meaning you will need 8 iron plate constructors, with one of them at 50% clock speed. You'll need 37.5 wire per minute per machine, which is a clean 300 for the whole system. However, since you're on Mark II belts at this point, you will need to split these up into a couple systems. And here's how you could set up that system, so bear with me here. It's not as hard as it might seem. It's really all about finding the lowest common denominator. The iron plates can be split into 2 groups of 4, each with the 4th machine at 75% clock speed in each group. The wire is a little more complex, as the numbers for this alternate recipe do not match up nicely. You need 13.333 repeating machines. The simplest way to set this up will probably be to create 4 subgroups of 4 machines, with the 4th machine in each of those groups clocked to 33.33 repeating percent. Thankfully, the clock speed box is pretty smart. Instead of typing that number in and hoping that you properly rounded it, you can actually just type in 100 divided by 3, which will get the number perfect. Okay, got all that? It's not as complicated as it sounds, but Satisfactory does get complicated in the later stages, so mastering these sort of complicated setups early might just set you up for later. As you can see, things do get weird with unusual numbers, but I like using this as an excuse to find the lowest common denominator and fit the puzzle pieces together. So the first lesson to learn here is to seek out alternate recipes as soon as possible, and the second is to figure out how to use what is available to you using those alternate recipes, rather than just shipping in materials from halfway across the map. Artificially restricting yourself to only using nearby materials can add a new layer of fun to a game that can sometimes feel repetitive if you've played it long enough. I actually used this exact setup when I started my 1.0 playthrough, and as I got faster belts, I reincorporated screws using the cast screw recipe, since those recipes are still pretty efficient and space wasn't an issue for me. I even used the bolted frame recipe for my modular frames, which uses more screws, but less iron overall, which offsets the additional iron usage from other recipes a little bit. Now, all of this said, this pretty much just applies to the early game. When it comes to the late game, screws will be easier to move and resources in general will be more plentiful to you. And technically, the steel screws alternate recipe is the most resource efficient way to make them, even though the production line is a lot more complex. But in the early game, every little advantage counts, and removing screws from the early game and the early mid game can be a real lifesaver. Using alternate recipes to make your life a little bit easier depending on where you are is going to help a lot. I hope you found these production line ideas helpful if you're a new player, and even if you have played for hundreds of hours, let me know if you learned something. I get all kinds of comments about longtime players hearing things for the first time from one of my videos. I'd like to thank War Thunder one last time for sponsoring this video. Like I said, I'll only accept a sponsorship if I truly believe in it, and I have genuinely spent a lot of time playing War Thunder, and I think it's a great online multiplayer game with really cool features. Be sure to check out the links in the pinned comment or video description to claim your bonus pack, available on PC and consoles, for new and returning players that haven't played in the last 6 months. That includes premium vehicles, in-game currency, and more. Thanks to all of you for giving the game a try. Also, be sure to like and subscribe to Satisfactory News if you want to see more helpful content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.